Good day everyone! I hope you are all doing great. This is Adessa G. Sarabia. In this video, I am going to discuss the Module 2 components of special and inclusive education, specifically the Lesson 1 that is all about the child find, assessment, and evaluation process. Guided by these desired learning outcomes for this lesson. First, analyze the procedures in implementing child find in special and inclusive education, and second, explain the process of assessment in special education and inclusive education. Before delving into the lesson proper, let's stimulate first our minds with 4 picks 1 word activity. I guess most of you are familiar with this game. I'll be showing you pictures and you need to guess what word you can associate with it. You are given 10 seconds to answer. Let's start with the first 4 pictures. If your answer is child, you get it right. Child is defined in RA 9344 and RA 7610 as person below 18 years of age. The RA 7610 also included the definition of children as those over 18 years old but are unable to fully take care of themselves or protect themselves from abuse, neglect, cruelty, exploitation, or discrimination because of a physical or mental disability or condition. Next. If assessment is your answer, then you are right. Assessment, as you all know, or as we all know, involves collecting information about the student for the purpose of making decisions. In special education, it is a process employed to determine a child's specific learning strengths and needs and utilized to determine whether or not a child is eligible for special education services. Last 4 pictures. What word you can associate with it? If your answer is evaluation, you are correct. Evaluation, as defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it is the determination of value, nature, character, or quality of something or someone. In special education, it is a process that determines if a disability is present and involves writing a report explaining what the child can do or needs help doing. We've unlocked some words of interest for this lesson. As we deepen our understanding on special and inclusive education, one of the specific obligations that we as educators must address is the knowledge of child find. Based on DepEd Order 72 Series 2009, which is all about the inclusive education as strategy for increasing participation rate of children. Child Find is a component of comprehensive inclusive program which refers to locating where children with special needs are through the family planning survey, advocacy campaigns, and networking with local health workers. Children with special needs who are not in school are visited by special education teachers, and parents should be convinced to enroll their children in SPED centers or school nearest their home. In the report of Barzalio, she defined child find as a legal mandate that falls under the federal law known as Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, that requires school districts to have a plan to identify and evaluate children between birth and age 21 with disabilities. The online article of Wisconsin Early Childhood Collaborating Partners 2021 also mentioned that Child Find is a component of IDEA requiring the states to identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities who are in need. Basically, the term suggests its own meaning, which is finding the child, and that child pertains to the person with disabilities who are in need, especially an educational support and assistance. For it to be effective, the procedure should have the following steps. First, informing. The state should have public awareness activities that inform teachers, doctors, parents, and other people involved with children or those who care for children about the signs of disability. For instance, through free training or giving of brochures about the possible disabilities and signs to watch out for children. Second step is identifying and reporting. This is identifying and reporting of possible signs of disability. If the teacher suspects a disability, he or she must report it to the school and parents, or if the parent know that their children or their child have special needs, they must report it to the school and teachers so that it will be addressed through assessment and evaluation process for special and inclusive education, by which we will talk about in the next slides. Third is screening a child to confirm the signs of potential disability. It is not advisable to conclude that the child has disability just because of her trouble in learning or being an indifferent learner. Like any other important matter, the child will undergo screening to formally confirm the signs through series of assessment methods under special and inclusive education. Fourth step is evaluating a child if the screening recommends it. The evaluator will write a report on the findings about the case of the child and include the necessary actions to address the needs of the child. Last important step is servicing a disability. This includes providing the necessary care to the child, implementing appropriate strategies to aid the learning process, and even providing assistive devices or tools that will sufficiently aid the child whether or not the child is homeschooled or included in the mainstream classroom. Going further, Lerner, Lowenthal, and Egan 1998 presented the 6 sequential stages of assessment process. Assessment has a variety of methods that includes observations of the child, interviews with the family, informal tests, or teacher-made tests such as observations, summative, rating scales, checklists, and anecdotal records, and formal or standardized tests such as WISC or Wechsler's Intelligence Scale for Children, the Sanford Binet test, Key Math 3 Diagnostic Assessment, and many others. The information gathered through the assessment is significant in identifying the child as eligible for special services, planning instruction, and measuring process. Going back, the 6 stages span from child find to program evaluation. Stage 1 is the child find or case finding, which I've discussed earlier. This is the procedures in locating those children who might need early intervention services and programs. This stage is required because many parents don't know that services are available for young children. Some parents may not realize that their child has a developmental problem, or the family may deny that the problem exists because of strong cultural beliefs and traditions. Some strategies for this stage are building community awareness through public agencies and organizations, setting up a system for referrals, canvassing the community for young children who need screening, and maintaining local publicity and contacts with sources of referral. Stage 2 is developmental screening, a cursory method for obtaining general information about a child's development and detecting any potential problems. The screening is not intended to be a comprehensive diagnosis, but rather provides a first quick look at the child. Screening procedures are typically used with large groups of children. Screening tests should be brief, inexpensive, have objective scoring systems that are valid and reliable. When the screening indicates that a young child has potential problems, it is critical that the child receives a more comprehensive diagnosis. Diagnosis is the third stage of the assessment process. It is a more intensive evaluation than screening. Information is obtained through observation, interviews, case history, and informal and standardized tests. The examiners strive to determine the nature of the child's difficulties, the severity of the problem, and the child's strengths and weaknesses. This information becomes the basis for determining eligibility for special education services. The diagnosis is conducted by members of multidisciplinary team. Members of the multidisciplinary team could include a speech or language pathologist, a specialist in hearing such as audiologist or otologist evaluates hearing loss, and psychologists to determine how the child's development related to language acquisition. A family interview would provide additional information about case history, language performance at home, and the primary language of the family. Information collected through the diagnosis leads to the decision about the nature and severity of the problem and assists in planning intervention. Individual planning of programs and intervention stage is done if the diagnosis indicates there is a need for early intervention. The next stage involves assessment for the planning of programs and interventions. To closely link this stage of assessment to the actual curricula of the child's early intervention program, curriculum-based or criterion reference instruments and procedures are used. The areas considered in the planning process for preschool children include sensory or physical development, language and communication abilities, fine and gross motor development, cognitive abilities, adaptive or self-help skills, and social-emotional development. After the child is placed in an intervention program, it is important that the child's progress is monitored frequently, which is the fifth stage. Multiple checks include observations, developmental checklists, and rating scales. This includes the collection of the data on a regular basis and analyze it to determine mastery of targeted skills, taking note of the progress in meeting goals and objects on the child's individualized education plan or IEP, or individualized family service plan or IFSP, and determining the effectiveness of the intervention and changes that are needed in the intervention plan. The last stage is the program evaluation. It is also important to evaluate the intervention program itself. Program evaluation is objective, systematic procedure for determining progress of children and the effectiveness of the total intervention program. It may be necessary to make needed changes and modification in the intervention program. There is also an evaluation process based on the IDEIA or IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, that enumerates the steps from identification to eligibility. According to the Family Network on Disabilities 2015, students cannot receive any special education and related services until the process has been completed. First is the referral. Anyone who has knowledge of the child and suspects that the child has a disability may initiate the referral and evaluation process. May it be the parents, teacher, doctor, social worker, therapists, student, or school-based problem-solving team. This process starts with pre-referral activities, and if the child's disabilities with the intervention in pre-referral activities Then the referral is made and the parents are given with a consent form for evaluation. The parental consent for evaluation must include the reasons for evaluation, type of testing to be used and will test, written in parents' native language. And the evaluation begins that should be completed within 60 school days. Others consider 35 school days. Evaluation determines the category of disability, whether the child needs specially designed instruction and or related services, the present levels of performance and educational needs of the child, and whether any accommodations or modifications are needed. Areas that may be evaluated are health, vision, hearing, independent skills, communication, intellectual achievement, academic achievement, and social history of child and family and behavior. The whole evaluation process must have no discrimination, must have trained evaluators, more than one procedure, and conducted in child's native language. Some of the evaluation tools are McCarthy Scales for Children's Abilities, Wechsler's Intelligence Scales, Stanford Binet Intelligence Scales, Kaufman ABC, Vineland Social Maturity Scale, AAMD Adaptive Behavior Scale, Woodcock-Johnson, and Thematic Appreciation Test. An independent educational evaluation or IEE is conducted if the parent disagrees with the evaluation of the school. There comes the re-evaluation that includes the notification and request for consent for the re-evaluation. And if the parent fails to respond to the request, the re-evaluation is conducted without parental consent. If the school district can demonstrate that it had taken measures to obtain consent. After the evaluation is the identification or recognition on the part of the parent, a teacher, or another person that a child have special learning needs. Next step is the eligibility determination meeting, where results are discussed, attended by parents, school staff, and evaluators. If the result of the prior steps indicate that a child is eligible for special education services, the team begins the Individual Education Plan or IEP. The written plan is called Individualized Education Program that describes the student's special learning needs and special education services to be provided to meet those needs. Last step is the placement step. The goal of this step is to provide the child or student with an appropriate education that is also free. The range of available placements are residential school, hospital or homebound, ESE or alternative school, ESE class full-time, pull-out part-time, and fully included with aids and services. Under IEP, the annual review and re-evaluation of the program or plan are conducted to improve the IEP. That ends my report for Module 2, Lesson 1. Remember that no single test or evaluation can capture a child's full spectrum of strengths and challenges. This has been Adessa, and thank you.